Hi, everybody in Facebook land. I'm very glad that you could join me tonight for our very first Facebook Live broadcast on Gender Creative 101. What is it? I'm going to give this a few minutes to get up and running because we were having some technical glitches earlier, and I just want to make sure that people have a chance to come in and join us. Come on over. You can say hi. So Charlie.
Hello.
Charlie's here. He wants to say hi real quick.
See if anybody says hi.
Hi. Oh, okay, good. We have Sarah. Hi, Sarah. Glad that you're here. So we will get started in about 1 minute or less, answering some questions. Oh, thank you, buddy. Thank you. I did not know Charlie was going to be in here.
Charlie.
Oh, this is my friend Dan. Say hi.
Hello, Dan.
Okay, I've got to start this conversation here. You can hang out, or you can go out. Either way. Okay, so what I'd like to do here, and I have my notes in front of me. Forgive me that I am not really all that good at speaking off the cuff, so I am using my notes to help me stay on agenda and not get too far off topic or off track. So if you see me looking down a lot, it's because I'm looking at my notes so that I don't totally lose my place. What I had done is put together a little agenda of things that I wanted to discuss tonight. And of course, you can send me questions here through Facebook Live. And if I am not able to respond to them during the video here, then I will certainly respond to them at some point soon. So I have several questions that we're going to attempt to answer. And oh, Pop's here. Hi, Pop.
Hi.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Real quick, Charlie's going to show you a picture really quick, and then we're going to move forward with our discussion.
Well, here's one. Here's the back of it.
Okay. So that's Charlie.
One.
All right.
Here's the last one.
Very nice. Okay. He's gotten really into drawing lately. So for tonight's agenda, it is Gender Creative 101. What is it? First of all, I just want to answer the question, who are the Sirois family? We're just a family that lives in North Carolina. I have 3 children. My name is Martie. Last name Sirois. I know it's kind of a difficult last name to adopt, especially after having Todd as a maiden name, which was way easier, but it is Sirois. That's how it's pronounced. Lots of people have asked.
Just think Illinois.
Yeah, like Illinois, exactly. Anyway, we live here in North Carolina. I was born and raised here, but my husband is a transplant. He was born and raised in New England. So my 3 kids, though, or our 3 kids, were born and raised here in North Carolina as well. So I guess the next question I'd like to try to answer is, before we get into definitions of gender creative and all those other lovely terms, why are we so open, and why do we write publicly, or why do I write publicly about this? So I've been writing my entire life. I kind of consider writing my therapy. There's just something magical about getting a thought that's swirling around in your brain out of your brain and onto paper or a computer screen that just helps you be able to deal with it and move on. So I write a lot. I always have. When I was in elementary school, I had a daily journal. So I have tons and tons of notebooks in my attic, spiral bound notebooks, where I have written about my silly little life adventures in elementary school all the way up through high school. So this is not something that I just kind of started overnight. I have been writing a little bit all of my life, but I started blogging 10 years ago. It was 2008, and I started blogging by posting pictures and stories about my kids and my family, mostly for our out-of-town family members, just so they could kind of keep up with our rapidly growing kids and family. And Charlie here, he was just always in a princess costume. So whatever pictures or photographs that we took, you could always see Charlie in the background in one of his princess costumes. It was just life around here. Now, my older two children are cisgender, which means that they identify as their biological sex, and we'll get to that later. But anyway, so the blogging originally started out as a family project, a way to keep in touch with family and friends that didn't live close by. By the time Charlie was 4, other little preschool boys were going ahead and growing out of their dress-up phase, but Charlie was not. He was just gaining momentum and having more interest. His desire was just kind of getting stronger to play dress-up and play with the stereotypical girls' toys. Now, what is the rule in our house? We don't have
girls, boys, and girls' toys and boy toys. No girl stuff and no boy stuff.
Yeah, we just have stuff or toys. We don't label them girls or boys, but whatever. So Charlie has an older sister and he has an older brother. So he had the ability to choose to play with whatever he wanted. There were plenty of princess dolls and there were plenty of army men. Charlie always gravitated towards his sister's things. So anyway, when I realized that he was kind of growing, or that he was not growing out of this phase and other little boys were in his preschool, I felt like I had a choice. I could discourage it just for the sake of it being easier for him in school and in life in general, or I could embrace it. And I felt like if I discouraged it, then that would be doing a disservice, because it would be putting a taboo label on something that wasn't taboo, in my opinion. And also, just knowing the little bit that I know about kids, when you discourage them from doing something, they only want to do it more. So I wasn't really sure where we were going with this, but I was just following his lead. So he kind of lived in the princess costumes and high heels when he was a kiddo, and we had a woman who kept children in her home, and we're not using any names, but we had a woman that kept children in her home, and Charlie was one of the children that she kept while I was working. And all the little boys in her care were about 4 years old, and they all enjoyed playing princess dress up together. It was an activity that they really enjoyed doing, and when I would come to pick up Charlie from this person's house, he would still be in his princess costume and happy and excited, and we would, kind of laugh about it and move on with our day. There was another little boy there who I found out that when his mother showed up and found out that he was in a princess costume, she freaked out a little bit and told him that he was never to do that again, that boys don't wear dresses and blah, blah, blah. I know you don't remember this because you were, it was a long time ago. But anyway, she discouraged her son from doing this. And I know that his desire to dress up did not go away that year, because he was still dressing up every day in princess costumes, but the difference was that he would scramble to get out of his costume when he heard his mom's car in the driveway. And he was very afraid of what her reaction would be if she caught him playing princess dress up. And then I found out it went on to later become an issue in their house, where he wanted to wear his older sister's ballet costumes and princess costumes. And his mother ended up throwing out all of the princess costumes so that he could no longer even have the option. So when I heard stories like that, I just thought, that's just not how I want to do it. So we kind of made a conscious decision then and there. We're going to embrace this, and we're not going to embrace it halfway. We're going to go ahead and embrace it all the way. We cannot be accepting of it behind closed doors, but then out in public tell him not to be that way, because we felt that that would send the wrong message. So I also thought, another thing was, I thought this was just kind of a Southern thing, because I've lived here my whole life. And that summer we went up to New England to spend some time with Matt's family, and we were in a store like a Walmart, something like that. And I was on the toy aisle looking at some things, and a little boy was shopping near us, and and he picked up something that was pink and purple and sparkly. And I overheard the conversation. He said to his dad, he said, "Daddy, do you like pink?" And his dad said, "Ugh, no, that's a girly color." And I was just like, oh my gosh, I thought that New England and like this area was progressive, and I thought that people so I realized then that it was not just a Southern phenomena. This is everywhere. This type of reality is everywhere. And so I started opening my blog up to ideas like this that I wanted to explore and find out. You know, I just wanted to get my thoughts out onto paper and try to sort through my feelings of why there was such a double standard. So, need a sip of water real quick. My husband and I have kind of been following his lead on this all along. We have always been honest with him about the types of people that are out there, that there are people that accept and that there are people that do not accept or don't understand. So he knows that, but he's still, even knowing that that people are can say mean things sometimes, he still chooses to be himself. And everybody should live like that, because it's really cool.
Hi, Justin.
Charlie's seeing who is tuning in, and he's saying hello. Anyway, so I feel like since we've always been honest with him about the types of people that are out there, he understands, he knows what he's walking into every day, and yet he still does it. It's his choice. And he goes back and forth. Some days he wears his Justice sparkly shirts. Some days he wears his Justice tight jeggings. Other days he's in Minecraft and sweatpants. It just depends on his mood, and it's all good. But the thing is, whether we wrote publicly about him or not, the name calling would still happen. He would still be labeled gay or sissy or a whole bunch of other things that I really don't want to say right now because they're meant as slander. But so regardless of whatever I have to say or what I write about it or how publicly I am about it, these people are still going to label him. They are still going to talk about him. They are still going to be the way that they are, regardless of whether I write about it or not. So, I mean, they already did start calling him gay before I was writing publicly. That already started happening in school a while back. So this is before my public writing. So by me writing about him, I feel like we're going ahead and claiming back that language. And we're claiming back those words, sissy, gay, even though he's not sexually identifying yet, but you know how people sling that word around. And no, we can't use names. Sorry, bud. Sorry. But anyway, I maybe in a minute. We'll see if there's time. Okay. Let me get.
Sorry for interrupting, guys. I just have a lot of questions.
Okay. Well, all right. We're gonna have to do a Charlie Q&A because he wants to take the microphone over here. Okay. Anyway, you can call him sissy, gay, whatever, all you want, all day long. But by me calling him that first, you've really gotten nothing. You know what I mean? Like, I'm claiming that language back and I'm turning it into something positive, or at least that's what I'm trying to do. When I was a kid his age, there were definitely some friends of mine who were more feminine acting. I grew up in the theater, so musical theater, lots of, there were a lot of gay guys in community musical theater. So that they've always been a part of my life, and I've always heard their stories. And even recently, I've been listening to stories of friends who have just come out, and they say things that are just that just really get you in the heart. Like they're either waiting until a parent dies in order to come out because they don't want to hurt their parents, or they're waiting until they're in their mid 40s before they come out because, again, they want to protect their family. But when they finally do come out, they're having this huge relief and like a second childhood all over again. And I don't want my kids to have to wait until midlife to be able to express who they are. Okay, so the other thing was I have been searching around town and online with my blogging since about 2008, trying to find other parents like me who are raising this type of kid. This is one of those things that I think in the past maybe people just didn't talk about it. It was the big white elephant in the room that nobody wanted to discuss, and I'm trying to change that. So I have talked to a whole bunch of parents recently after some of my writing went viral, and parents like me are desperate for resources. They're desperate for ways to support their gender nonconforming kids. So I know it's not just me, and I'm not living in a vacuum. There are tons and tons and tons of these kids, and they need support, and they need to know that they are loved for exactly as they are. I stumbled upon a couple of wonderful people through their writing. Cheryl Kilo Davis, who wrote My Princess Boy, found that book when Charlie was very young, when he was maybe 2 or 3 or maybe even 4, but somewhere around that time. She was on news programs in the morning talking about her son, who she labeled a princess boy. This is before I think anyone was really using the term gender creative. And then Lori Duran, who wrote Raising My Rainbow, the book and the blog. And those are kind of my role models and who I looked up to when I was raising Charlie. And I felt that I was right at the same place that they were in their journeys. And then more recently, I had the awesome experience of being a part of a show called Listen to Your Mother. This is a international, I think, show that it's a stage series of live readings. And that was the first time I ever shared any of my writing publicly. I auditioned in, I think, January. I got a email the next day that I got in, and I was reading a piece about the moment I discovered that Charlie was gender creative, or the moment that it clicked for me, the moment that I realized it wasn't a phase, it wasn't going away, the moment I realized I need to support this and I need to be vocal about it. So I got into that show, and before I ever did that, though, I think it's important to say that I asked Charlie's consent. Any published writer knows that you have to have the permission of whoever you're writing about before you can write about them. So, and yeah, how much consent can a 10-year-old or a 9 at the time, 9-year-old give? I know, but he did. In the moment, he gave consent. And not only did he say, I want you to do this, but he was like, Mom, you have to do this. And he was fully supportive, as much as a 9-year-old little boy can be. And all I had to see was the enthusiasm on his face at the idea of me going public with his story of being gender creative. He really wanted other kids his age to associate with, other kids that he could hang out with and play dolls with, or play Barbies, or play dress up, or whatever. Most of his cisgender male friends that come over, the few of them, they're not into playing dolls. So he really wanted this message out there because he also felt there were probably more kids like him. Okay, so I went ahead and did listen to your mother, and then right before our second read through for the show, a little thing in North Carolina happened called HB2. More on that later, but it was just perfect timing with all of the, I guess, misconceptions about transgender people. The message that I was reading about gender creativity, I felt really needed to be heard right now, right here and right now. And then I stood up and read it, and it was well received. And then a month later, I submitted a piece on gender to Huffington Post. Thank you to my friend Jessica Rotenberg, who encouraged me to do so after she got published on Huffington Post. They accepted my article overnight, and then I had the senior editor, Noah Michelson of Queer Voices, who was Charlie made me a.
Because I saw.
Thank you, Brent.
Brent Wilson.
He made me a #1 mom ribbon. I'm gonna wear that to work tomorrow.
And of course, it's backwards.
That's okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. Okay. Now you have to stop interrupting because I keep losing my train of thought.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Huffington Post. Yes. So I have the senior editor of Queer Voices emailing me and encouraging me to write more. So I did. And then they ended up publishing in 4 months 13 of my pieces and elevated 11 of them to like the front page of the entire Huffington Post, or to the front page of Queer Voices or Parent Voices or whatever. So I'm kind of like a professional blogger who doesn't get paid, but that's okay. It's a labor of love. But I think it's been wonderful because I have been able to connect with people all over the world who also needed this message right now. I have received private messages. God, every night I try to chip away. I try to get through just maybe 10 and respond to them. And I have not had one person reach out to me personally with something negative. The hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of responses that I've received directly from people have all been positive, me too kind of moments. The negative comments tend to live in the comments section of Facebook, the comments section of Huffington Post, places like that. That's where all the negative nastiness is, because people can kind of hide behind a veil of anonymity at their computer screen and type away whatever they think, and it's stuff they probably wouldn't say to your face in real life. But I've heard from people in Egypt, Germany, England, Ireland, Australia, Finland, Russia, Saudi Arabia, Canada, South Africa, on and on and on, who have all said that either they are living a gender creative life, or someone in their family is, or their child is. Charlie himself has received more positive, inspiring messages than we can even count. I won't even get into all of that right now, but he has been offered some pretty generous free things. Not that that matters, but I mean, it's just that's why this message needed to be heard. People are responding. If they're responding in such a way that they want to send him, 3 brand new pairs of high-end glasses because they noticed in the articles that he's a glasses wearer, then that means they cared an awful lot about this topic in general. So he's received nothing but positive messages from people, and it has helped boost his confidence, if anything. So it's been a win-win situation all around. So let me move on here and talk about breaking it down. What is gender creative? So most of the formal info that I have on this comes from a few sources, because there are not a whole lot right now. We're getting there, but we have a ways to go. Most of my information comes from Dr. Diane Ehrensaft, who is kind of the the patron saint of gender creative children. She has written several books. I have one of them here with me tonight. This was her first one, Gender Born, Gender Made. She also wrote she didn't write the transgender child. It was the gender creative child. This is another one that I'm in the middle of reading right now. She knows it all. I would highly recommend that you read Dr. Diane Ehrensaft, Ehrensaft. And also I use genderspectrum.org. This is a wonderful resource. Their mission is to create a gender inclusive world for all children and all youth. And to accomplish that, they help families, organizations like schools, churches, all kinds of places to increase their understandings of gender nonconformity. And then the implications of the evolving views and languages that we have on this topic. And also I use NASP, the National Association of School Psychologists. So if you want references, that's where most of my work comes from. All right, what is gender creative? Gender creative is an adjective. It is a respectful term, and that's really important. It's a respectful term that describes children, typically children, but I mean, it can describe people, but typically children who don't conform to traditional or stereotypical gender norms. It's also known as a developmental position that's used in a lot of therapeutic settings where, and this is Dr. Diane Ehrensaft's words, and I love this. She says, in which the child transcends the culture's normative definitions of male/female to creatively interweave a sense of gender that come neither totally from inside the body, that is the body or the psyche, nor totally from the outside, which is culture or others' perceptions, but resides somewhere in between. And I think that's brilliant. That's exactly what it is. These kids, are sometimes referred to as gender non-conforming. We're kind of trying to move away from that term because non-conforming implies that it is somehow different from the norm. So another word becoming a little bit outdated is gender variant, because that also implies difference from a norm. So gender creative is one of those respectful terms that we use for children who don't fall as exclusively male or female in their presentation or their expression. On that note, there's a few other outdated terms which some people may consider offensive. Gender dysphoria, we're trying to get away from that as well. That's mainly used for like health insurance and medical reasons. Sometimes doctors have to use it, or that has to be used for legal purposes. It can be used for access to an IEP or a 504 plan in an educational setting. But the DSM-5, which is kind of the Bible of psychologists, it aims to avoid stigma and to ensure clinical care for individuals that see and feel themselves to be a different gender than their assigned gender. And it also replaces the former diagnostic name of gender identity disorder, because thank God we have realized it is not a disorder anymore. Just like being gay is not a disorder, being trans is not a disorder. So it's important also to note that gender nonconformity is not in itself a mental disorder, and I'm really glad we're moving away from that. The critical element, I guess, with gender dysphoria is that there's a presence of clinically significant distress in the person that's associated with the condition. So Charlie is a perfect example of someone who's gender creative because he's never had distress over having a boy body and boy parts. And he's never really had distress over liking girls' things. It's just who he is. All right, so some common LGBTQ plus vocabulary and terms. Transsexual, that's a word we don't really like that word. We don't use that word much anymore. That originated in the medical and the psychological communities a long time ago, and it is really outdated. I mean, it is still preferred by some people, but when we're talking about the gender creative community, it's kind of offensive to use a word like transsexual. And also a lot of transgender people would never call themselves transsexual. So it's always best just to ask the person what pronoun they go by. One of the lessons I learned when I was volunteering at the LGBT Center this summer was that you should never assume someone's pronoun. Now, I have a lot of hope for this next generation because my older two kids in high school already knew this. I was telling them, like, I had learned this amazing fact. Oh, you shouldn't ever assume that you know someone's pronoun. And they're like, yeah, we knew that, Mom. So this next generation has it going on. We need to help my age and older get there. And maybe my age and a little younger needs to get there. But gender expansive is another one of these kind of umbrella terms that Charlie would fall into. Gender expansive is also an adjective, and it describes a wider, more flexible range of gender identity and or expression than is typically associated with binary gender. Binary meaning male or female, black or white, this or that, nothing in between. And we now know that gender is not that way. There's everything. It's a whole spectrum. Gender is a spectrum. So let's talk about just a couple of the differences. You have biological sex, you have gender, you have sexual orientation, and then you have gender identity and gender expression. These are all completely different topics that have nothing to do with one or the other. So biological sex is that's a noun. It's biological. Simply put, it's sex as it's known. You know, the shorter version is just sex. Sex is the internal and external reproductive organs and sex chromosomes. Also, it's a medical term that it can be used to refer to the chromosomal, hormonal, and anatomical characteristics that are used to classify an individual as male or female, or born intersex with ambiguous genitalia. And this is an important thing to note. This is another one of those things that maybe we just don't talk about, and we should, that there is a whole wide population of people out there who were born intersex or born with ambiguous genitalia, such that it's not outwardly obvious whether they are male or female. There are some parents who go ahead and pick a gender for their kid and say, well, we're going to go ahead and decide that this is a girl. And then sometimes surgery is involved to go ahead and make that person look more like a girl. Other times, parents don't decide and they say, we're going to let our kid figure it out. And the kid grows up and gets to decide on their own whether they're going to identify as male, female, neither, or both. So there's all kinds of options. Gender, and I think here's where people really get confused. Gender is not the same thing as biological sex. Gender is a noun. It is a completely cultural construct. Now, I know we use it in our language interchangeably with biological sex, but it's not the same thing, and that's what we've really got to get our head around and embrace. Gender refers to, let me get rid of that. Gender refers to the attitudes, feelings, and behaviors that a given culture associates with a person's biological sex, and its behavior that is compatible with cultural expectations, and that's what we reference as gender. Of course, this varies between cultures. It varies within even one culture, and it changes over time. There was not too long ago where pink was, I think as recently as the 1940s, pink was the color designated for boys and blue was for girls, because blue was seen as a more soft, more feminine color. And then once advertising took on a life of its own, those colors got switched somehow. But anyway, they change over time. So gender is not the same thing at all as sex. Basically, if you can think of it this way, sex is in the body, gender is in the mind, excuse me. Gender identity, again, is something that comes from within. That is like your deeply held sense of being male, female, or another gender. It is not related to sexual orientation. There are a lot of misconceptions about that, but gender identity has nothing to do with your sexual orientation, plain and simple. Gender expression is yet again something different. This is the way that individuals show their gender to the world. So it's, again, not related to sexual orientation. It is just the external display of one's gender through a combination of things, which could include dress, demeanor, social behavior, lots of other factors, but mostly things that are measured on scales of masculinity or femininity. And sometimes we also refer to this as gender presentation. Cisgender, that's a word I mentioned earlier. That is just a word that means, or a term that describes a person whose gender identity aligns with the sex assigned to them at birth. For the majority of us, that's the case. And that's a privilege, being cisgender. If you are born anything other than heterosexual cisgender, you've already got the cards stacked against you. You've already got a difficult life ahead of you. So cisgender, again, your biological sex and your gender identity and expression match.
We're supposed to look back.
Okay, all right. All right, let's get to the word transgender. Now, transgender is an adjective. Okay, it is an umbrella term that covers a whole wide range of identities that transgress the socially defined gender norms. It can also be used to describe a person who lives as a member of a gender other than the one assigned to them at birth. But the thing with transgender, because it's an adjective, is we don't say transgendered people. Thank you. Because that is grammatic. It's just incorrect. Just like you wouldn't say, oh, that person is gayed, or that person is straighted. No, you can say a person is transgender, but you don't say a person is transgendered, because that also implies like a I guess it's just a small grammatical thing, but it can be really offensive to some people. And also we're trying to move away from that ed on the end, because it kind of makes it sound like past tense. It makes it sound like it's a completed verb that marks a distinct time before and a time after. So adopting transgender as the adjective helps us to move positively away from some common misconceptions about what it is to actually be trans. And also, if you want to use it as a verb, then you would say he has transitioned or she has transitioned, not she has transgendered or anything like that. Oh, and one other thing, this one cracks me up, but we don't use transgender as a noun either. So referring to someone as a transgender, like, oh, she's a transgender, that can sound just about as odd as saying, look, a gay. And we don't say that. It kind of turns a descriptive adjective into a defining noun, and that can make the subject sound distant and foreign, like they're something else first and then a person second, and we want to get away from that as well. GLAAD, G-L-A-A-D, offers a wonderful media reference guide on terms that are generally accepted in terms to avoid, if you want to look into that ever. And finally, sexual orientation. That is our physical, emotional, or romantic attraction to others. It is completely unrelated to gender identity, or gender expression. I could say so much more about all of this vocabulary, but I'm going to leave it at that for right now, and move to the next question, which is this new? Why are so many people coming out now? Counter to many perceptions, gender creativity is nothing new. I guess the only thing that we can fairly say is new is the constantly evolving language as we seek to understand what this kind of means for all of us. Native Americans, for example, are, the first people that inhabited this country had male, female, and a third gender, which they referred to as two-spirit. So two-spirit people were the most esteemed people in the whole tribe. They were thought to be gifted from God. They were held in very high esteem. So that goes way back to the origin of our country here. So it's really nothing new. We have always had these people around us. Think back to the 70s and 80s, if you're my age. Back in the time when I was growing up, we absolutely had females who presented more masculine, or were known as tomboys. Think of Peppermint Patty from the Peanuts. She was absolutely a tomboy. Or maybe there was a girl you knew that liked to skateboard with the guys rather than play with baby dolls and Barbies. Think about the young boys that you knew who may have acted a little bit more feminine. They may have been referred to as sissy or sometimes even gay, whether or not they were sexually identifying yet. And this is not okay. This has got to stop. And this is why we are changing and evolving and seeking to find language that better humanizes all of us. So again, gender expansive people have been around forever. The only thing that's new probably now is that this generation, kind of my age and a little younger and maybe a little older, is collectively more understanding. We're more understanding of the need to validate these human beings for who they are, exactly as they are. And it's a circle. People are coming out more now because, especially kids, because people like Cheryl Keila Davis, Lori Duran, and Diane Aaron Saft were brave enough to start this conversation. People like me, we're just continuing it. We're standing on the shoulders of giants, per se. So I feel like the more we talk about it, the more we write about it, the more we put it all out there, the more people are going to talk about it, connect with other people. The walls will come down and people ultimately become more enlightened, more educated, and more open-minded, which is a good thing. So many of the LGBTQ people around my age are only recently coming out, in their midlives, because it wasn't safe to do that in the 80s. It's not necessarily safe to do so now, especially with things like HB2 in law, but it's a safer climate than it was back in the 80s. Why should we care about this population? Because first and foremost, they are our fellow human beings. We are all members of one race, the human race, and we need to make sure that people that are just trying to live authentically are supported. You also may or may not be aware, but there's a pretty huge chance that somewhere in your life you have a member of the LGBTQ plus community in your family or in your friend circle. Maybe it's a coworker. Maybe it's your mom or dad. Maybe it's your child. Maybe it's a cousin or a best friend. They're out there. They're in your life, and you need to know about them. So it serves everyone well when we seek to educate ourselves about differences and open our mind to different possibilities. Another question that we get a lot is, do young children really understand the complex nature of gender? The short answer to that is yes. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. While gender identity may be fluid or even in question for several years, gender expression can be shown from as early as 2 years old. And that was the case here with Charlie. Just from my own personal experience, he began his gender expression when he was 2. And he emphatically stated to me, "You know, Mommy, I'm only a boy because of my parts." And I was like, whoa, okay, that's pretty deep coming from a 2-year-old. I think I better listen to that. And that's really why I started listening and writing about this. But turns out that he has not been consistent, insistent, and persistent, which are kind of the 3 hallmarks of transgender. So the next question was, is it nature or nurture? Do we create these types? We're still trying to figure this out. Nobody really knows for sure, but there is this exciting emerging research that has shown that the mother develops an immune response. I'm going to read this part because I want to get it all right. The mother develops an immune response due to blood factor incompatibility with male fetuses. With each male fetus, the mother's immune system responds more strongly to what it perceives as a threat. The mother's immune response can disrupt typical prenatal hormones like testosterone, which have been implicated in both childhood nonconformity and adult sexual orientation. Is it nurture? Again, research is still emerging, but I am definitely of the camp that believes that people are born the way that they are. And the one thing that we do know with 100% certainty is that if these gender creative and transgender souls are stifled, if these children are made to hide who they really are, then their adult risk of suicide, of substance abuse, of homelessness, of mental disorder is more than quadrupled than that of the gender creative child or transgender child who is allowed to just be, and not only allowed to just be, but advocated for as well. So Dr. Diane Ehrensaft cites 3 different family types that are present in this type of child's life. There are transformers, transphobics, and transporters. Charlie, you're making me laugh. Okay, transphobics. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory, but transphobic parents, as Dr. Ehrensaft says, are not comfortable in their own gender, and they may not understand that gender is a fluid thing. They may feel that their child is an extension of themselves. Don't we all feel that way, that our kids are extensions of ourselves and that we're doing it all wrong? But transphobic parents may feel their child is an extension of themselves and respond negatively when their child is faced with his or her own adversity. She believes that these children, that these parents who deny their child with an excess of negativity and transphobic reactivity, this allows the child absolutely no room for nonconformity, and it undermines the love that the parent claims to have for the child. So the child learns that this is not a safe place. Home is not a safe place. And that's how that person grows up. And they internalize that. And it comes out in self-destructive ways when this person is an adult. And it's not good for anybody. Now, then there are transporters. Transporters are parents that appear to be completely accepting of their child's gender nonconformity, but on the inside, they have doubts about whether or not it is an authentic conformity. These are the type of parents who say things like, "Oh, it's just a phase," or "He's going to grow out of it." They don't really believe that this may be the reality, and they have to kind of deal with what their crushed dreams are of what they thought their children were going to be. And we all have to grieve that a little bit, because our children are absolutely not going to be, as my friend Debbie Jackson has said on Facebook Live before, children are not meant to be clones of us. We are expanding the population to grow and evolve. We don't want to create little minions that are exactly like us. We want them to be better than us. So transformers, this would be the last group of parents. These are parents who are comfortable in supporting their child in their gender variant journey, and they can easily identify their child as a separate person, separate from the parents. And the Dr. Ehrensaft states of these parents that these parents will stand a good chance of overcoming whatever transphobic reactions may reside within them. Lots of us have that initial, "Oh my God, my child can't be doing this," that we have to get over so we can get to the acceptance part. But they have the chance to get over those transphobic reactions, and they evolve into parents who both meet their child where he or she is and further become an advocate for their child. And that's what my husband Matt and I are trying to do, is to be an advocate of our non-conforming child to the outside world. So let's move on a little bit to HB2. I think everybody knows about this, but maybe not. There's no way to put this into easy terms, but basically on March 23rd, 2016, Governor McCrory, along with the Senate leaders and House of Representatives, signed House Bill 2, or HB2, into law. Now, they did this in an unprecedented emergency session in under 10 hours. And here are some of the things that it states. And this is directly from the text of HB2. And this is just one little part of it. And this is on the section of single-sex, multiple occupancy bathroom and changing facilities. Local boards of education shall require every multiple occupancy bathroom or changing facility that is designated for student use to be designated for and used by only students based on their biological sex. Then the document goes on to define what they mean by biological sex, and that is the physical condition of being male or female, which is stated on a person's birth certificate. Again, this goes back to, what about people that are intersex? And it's not just as easy for transgender people as changing their birth certificate. I know at one point there was some talk that, transgender people, yeah, they can use the bathroom of the gender that they identify with as long as they have it changed on their birth certificate. How hard is that? Well, it's pretty freaking hard, because you don't just walk up and change that overnight. I mean, there's a huge process that transgender people have to go through to live as a different gender. First of all, they have to live presenting themselves. Say you were born male, okay? You're an adult man, born male, but you've known all your life that it's wrong. That doesn't jive with you, and you know that you should have been born female. You identify with everything female. So you're going to go through the process of becoming a transgender woman. You've got to live, the states or the regulations and laws are different in different states, but a lot of the time, these people have to live as the opposite gender for a full year. That means they have to, out in public, that is, for a full year, they have to live as the opposite gender publicly for a year before they can even be considered for the surgery of sexual reassignment surgery. So during that whole year that they're kind of waiting it out, and that's if they even choose to have, elective surgery to change their anatomy, where do they go during that year of time that they're living and trying to establish themselves as a different gender? What bathroom do they use? It blows my mind. Anyway, it also states a whole bunch of other things. The law takes away, in effect, the ability of individuals to sue or bring forth a local legal lawsuit based on any type of discrimination. So if you're handicapped, if you're a veteran, if you're a woman, if you're gay, if you're trans, whatever, you, Charlie, oh, hi, Miss Spencer. Charlie says hi. You no longer can sue for discrimination in the state of North Carolina. And that is just, I have no words. I have no words for that. I just don't. But HB2 has a whole bunch of other things that got kind of hastily written into it and made into law in 10 hours. And I think it's fair to say that in the span of a single day, again, less than 10 hours, the North Carolina lawmakers introduced this bill. They passed this bill through 2 houses and got it signed by the governor. In an unprecedented emergency session. That seemingly urgent, I guess, urgent bill, urgent need, whatever, it also strikes down all of the LGBT inclusive non-discrimination ordinances across the entire state of North Carolina. I also would like to say that the state's Republican-led House of Representatives passed HB2. Again, I've said this a million times, but less than 10 hours after it was introduced. Sorry, dry mouth, talking too much. But the bill unanimously passed the Republican-controlled Senate. It was a vote of 32-0 because every single Democratic senator walked out in protest. They walked out of the chamber in protest, refusing to vote. Then Republican Governor Pat McCrory went ahead and signed it into law that evening. Now, this whole special emergency session, the reason why they did this in the first place was this was kind of the Republican response, or pretty much Republican response to Charlotte's public accommodations ordinance, which was passed back in February, I think February. The ordinance was merely trying to add sexual orientation and gender identity as factors that should go into the state's anti-discrimination law. And they should. I see nothing wrong with that. The ordinance does not affect employment, only public accommodations. It doesn't include, and it did include guarantees that transgender people could use the facilities that correspond with their gender identity. It also applied to shops, restaurants, taxis, limousine services, hotels, any other businesses that serve the general public. And so you have businesses that might refuse to perform a same-sex wedding or to host LGBT pride events, things of that nature. Those type of people would be in violation of this ordinance that the town of or city of Charlotte was trying to put forth. So the ordinance, I believe, was set to take place, I think it was going to start in April, but our lawmakers here in North Carolina went ahead and overruled municipal decisions, and they wrote into the law that they could do that from this point forward. I mean, that appears to be the whole goal of HB2 in the first place. But there's an awesome representative, Jeff Jackson, who I follow on Facebook, and he was tweeting out and Facebooking during that entire emergency session his thoughts. And follow him on Facebook, Senator Jeff Jackson. He tells it like it is. He gives very helpful, up-to-the-minute information on what's happening with our Senate and our House of Representatives. So HB2, as he pointed out, reached and sought far beyond Charlotte. It effectively took down all of the LGBT inclusive non-discrimination ordinances that were enacted by localities in the state. So the claim and the fear of these people is that heterosexual male predators will dress up and or somehow pretend to be transgender women for the purpose of gaining entry to female restrooms or locker rooms or changing facilities in order to sexually assault females. This is what our governor is perpetuating. This is the myth that is happening. And a lot of people believe this. A lot of people think that this is, but what about all the guys that are going to take advantage of this law? This is a conversation for another night because I'm almost out of time. But really, it doesn't fit the profile. The type of person who is going to sexually assault women somewhere like a public restroom or locker facility is a type of man who hates women in the first place. He has a deep hatred of women. He is not going to reduce himself to the status of dressing like or looking like a woman in public for the purpose of going to assault a woman. It just doesn't fit the profile. Sorry. I watch a whole lot of crime documentary, and that's not something that has ever been happened in this state or been documented. Really what HB2 is a well thought out, strategically placed political red herring to distract us from other important issues like education reform. So I also think it's one of these things that makes a lot of kind of red-blooded Americans boil, because it preys on their fears, it preys on their insecurities. It's basing a law around these fears and insecurities when this type of episode has never even happened. But we're making a law based on what could happen. And that's not how we are supposed to make laws. We don't make laws out of fear of what could potentially happen. Anyhow, it's a pointless argument, because right here in North Carolina, there have been 0 instances of heterosexual men posing as transgender women in order to gain entrance into a female restroom or whatever, locker room, changing facility, for the purpose of sexually assaulting female. Hasn't happened. Still hasn't happened. We're still waiting to hear of a time when this has actually happened. But the thing is, we can no longer afford to call effeminate young boys names like sissy, pansy, faggot, gay, or worse. This is an epidemic that I believe has got to stop. There's nothing inherently wrong with words that are typically associated with femininity. But when those words are used as weapons, as the lowest possible form of male mockery, or to label a kid who doesn't even have sexual identity on his or her radar yet, it's absolutely not okay. And in fact, it is actually sexual harassment when students in schools call other students names like this, because I have it right here, Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972. Let me get a sip. All right, Title IX states, let's see. Okay, harassment does not have to include intent to harm, be directed at a specific target, or involve repeated incidents. So, despite what may be taught in schools, and contrary to the belief of lots of people, harassment doesn't even have to happen more than one time in order to be considered harassment. So there's my say on that kind of thing. And again, I don't think that we need to be shaming little boys with feminine words, because, and I'll save this argument for another day, but my topic is this all stems from a hatred of women in the first place. And I'm not trying to be uber, feminist, but what is the biggest insult to a man? To call him or label him anything that reduces him to the status of a woman. Think of all those words that are used towards men to make them embarrassed. Think about it. They're all feminine words. It comes from a hatred of women. It comes from years and years and years of women fighting for the same type of rights that our transgender folks are now fighting for, that our black folks were fighting for at one point in time. Basic human civil rights. I have several questions that people have asked me that I'd like to answer, but I am kind of out of time. So I want to end with letting you know, what can I do to help? Vote. Please vote. Don't just vote, but vote informed. And vote locally. Those are the most important elections. We have got to change out our General Assembly or House of Representatives or Senate. We've got to change. If you want these issues to change, we have to vote. We cannot be complacent. We can't say, well, I can't vote for Trump or Hillary, so I'm just not going to vote, because essentially that's a vote for Trump. That's going to go to him if you sit it out and don't vote for either one. And I don't know anybody that wants him as president, but that's a different story. Volunteering and support group information. I run a program that this is my baby. I just started it this summer and it's going really well. It's called SEARCH. It's an acronym that stands for Safe Environment for the Acceptance of Rainbow Children. And the CH at the end is also kind of a little nod to my son Charlie, because CH are the first two letters of his name as well. So I also liked the kind of the thought of search in general, because I have been searching for, up until this point, for 8 years of other parents raising children like mine that wanted to connect and let our kids just play and hang out and be themselves. So SEARCH is a group. We have a closed private group on Facebook. If you want more information, you can private message me and I'll be happy to get you more information. Or Jen Miller Hogg is another person who is an administrator of the site, and she can approve people or not to be in the group as well. And my husband Matt is also a site admin. So we have that little community, which has been, I think, and I hope, a wonderful support system for all of the members in it. We now have well over 100 members, and many more requests that haven't even sent me an official request yet, but have said in a private message, I want to know more about your support group and how my kid can join. We've had some members that are not local that have even suggested that they would like to Skype into our meetings, and I think that would be awesome. So there's that. If you don't live here locally and you can't attend in person, you can absolutely join our group on Facebook, as long as you are an advocate or a parent of a gender creative, gender non-conforming, or transgender child. I'll be happy to give you way more information on that if you request it. In the last couple of minutes here, I'm going to see if anybody has a question. I'm going to look over at my comments, and I'll just take maybe about 3 or 4 minutes to answer any questions that might come in. But I also want to say that I'm going to try to be doing this on a regular basis. I'm not sure of day and time yet, but I'll work it out and keep you posted. I have a writer page on Facebook where I'm directing the friend requests that I'm getting from people I don't know. I'm directing them to that, so you can subscribe to that page as well. It's Martie Sirois, writer. You can get all my updates there. I will be presenting at on a panel of people doing a conference for safe schools coming up in a few weeks. I'm really excited about that. It's going to be like a roundtable discussion where we are training educators on how to be more inclusive in public schools towards these children. And on my next, the next installment, or whatever, the next episode, I don't know what I'm calling this yet, but the next Facebook Live, I do want to address some questions that I have been asked in the past. And these seem to be the type of questions I hear repeatedly, so probably a lot of people want to hear the answers. One of the questions is, well, how does your husband feel about this? How does his dad feel about this? I'll answer that later, but he's totally supportive. Another common question or comment that we get is some form of, well, that's all fine and good what you're doing. It's great you're letting your son be himself, but as long as you're being honest with him and being truthful about how hard of a time he's going to have, and make sure he knows he's going to be bullied. My answer to that is never okay. That is called victim blaming. Our family has lots of family meetings, and pretty much any conversation topic is fair game. But that one, as I said at the beginning of this program, we definitely told Charlie about the negativity and the hatred. So I want to discuss that more later about this whole concept of victim blaming. That no, our gender creative kids and transgender kids and gender expansive kids absolutely should not be subjected to shame, ridicule, teasing, questioning, anything like that in a public school or any public setting. And I want to talk about that more on the next time. And then the third most popular question we get is, but why the need to label? Can't kids just be kids? And my short answer for that is kind of, well, in my experience of raising 3 of them, no, kids can't just be kids. They're going to go ahead and label each other anyway. So if I go ahead and give him a positive label, it gives him a way to refute the comments when somebody says, you're gay. He can be like, no, I'm not gay. Don't know what my sexuality is yet. I am gender creative, and I'll be happy to tell you about that. We're still working on getting him to advocate that way for himself. But anyway, labels can be very important to kids that feel atypical. So I don't have a problem with labels. So there's a question here. Is this recorded so we can share this with others? Yes, this is recorded. Facebook Live is an awesome feature in that it records real time. But it will stay up on my writer page and maybe my personal page, but definitely my writer page. It will stay up there like forever, I guess. And you can go back and watch it. You can share it. You can rewatch it. I did make it public, so you can share this. Because I know there's some of you that I don't know personally, but I want you to be able to share if you would like to do so. So it is public and can be shared. Oh, my friend Ashley. Okay. She says, can't wait to get my t-shirt. Okay. Have not ordered them yet. And here's why. So after the Orlando shootings, Charlie was watching the news and wanted to do something about it. So he went on to a t-shirt design website, and he created a shirt for the search group. He designed it and created it. Now, in order for me to be able to buy like 10 of them, they're going to be really, 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 really super expensive. It's that customink.com. I have to now we did raise some money, but the cost of just trying to order like 10 of these specially designed shirts is going to be so tremendously high that we would have to give all of our fundraising money towards t-shirts, and we didn't feel right about that. But I do have a couple of people who have given me money for t-shirts, and I just want to let you know I have not forgotten about them. I still know who you are, and as soon as we have a big enough order that we can place and get them at a better price, because I just can't, out of my own pocket right now, pay, hundreds of dollars for 10 to 12 t-shirts. So I'm waiting until maybe more people are interested and want to buy them, but we want to go ahead and order them and get them out. So hit me up if you are interested in that. And I guess I have a lot more notes, but I'll save those for another time. You can also, if you rewatch this or share it, you can post questions later after the fact, and I will be able to view them, and I'll be able to answer them either on this thread or I can answer them in the next broadcast. So I will try to get to everybody's questions as soon as I'm able, and I look forward to hearing from you, and I look forward to connecting with even more of you. I'm going to go ahead and close it down for tonight. Yes, thank you. Jen is going to put that as an agenda item, fundraisers. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, everybody that joined in tonight. I can't tell you how much your support means to me right now and to my whole family. It is a tough and lonely battle sometimes, but we are determined that that we're doing the right thing. And I mean, you could tell from Charlie being in here earlier that he's clearly happy and safe at home, and he's on board. So hopefully we're going to change this world for these little kids. Okay. I wish everyone good night, and please text me or inbox me or private message me if you have any type of questions. And I will be updating my writer page as soon as I can with when I'll be going live again next. All right. Thank you so, so much for your support. Love you all. Love, hugs, and rainbows. Good night.